With our second session, continuing with the next speaker, who is Ms. Diana Kawas, who will brief us on the actions in Peru. Ms. Kawas is a Peruvian Palestinian professional with experience in diplomacy, international cooperation, and the United Nations system. A former diplomat herself and university lecturer, she holds a master's degree in diplomacy and international relations and in university teaching. She has worked with Palestinian communities across several countries in the Latin American region and is an active member of the Palestinian community in Peru, strongly advocating for human rights, peace, and dialogue between Latin America and Palestine. The floor is yours, Madam Kawas.
Thank you, Ambassador. Masahal Her. Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency, ambassadors, members of the diplomatic corps, representatives from UN, members of civil society, and all of those who are here with us. I am here to bring the perspective of a community that is not very much heard in such important spaces as this one. I am thankful to be here to talk about the Palestinian community in Peru. That community is one of the oldest ones in Latin America, with roots going back to the end of the 19th century. The first Palestinian to arrive to Peru was Cristiano, and that was in 1880, whereas the first Muslim arrived in 1920. As in other countries, that migration into Peru took place with three migrating waves. Even though there's no exact census, still we believe that there are about 40,000 Palestinians and Palestinian children and grandchildren. Most are Christians coming from Belém, Bejala, and Betajur. Although the last wave brought Muslim individual as well. But let me insist on something that is important. Here in Peru, Palestinian and the Christian Muslims are fully integrated and they are completely part of the Peruvian society. But we have had Palestinian representatives in our politics. We have had vice presidents, ministers, and members of Congress from the Palestinian community. The main cities where the Palestinian community lies are Lima, Arequipa, and Cusco. In Lima, we also have a Palestinian club that was founded in 1955 and that mainly acts as a social and cultural center. There, we see celebrations, Palestinian events, but that is not necessarily a political event, but usually in view of the latest happenings, this has had a favorable political and social awakening. Now, in talking about that community and our role in our political world, I'd have to start talking about something that is very complex, and that is the Peruvian political world. And here, I will give you my own idea as a former Palestinian officer in the region and in Peru. I have had contact with politicians, parliamentaries, discovering the challenges of interacting with the political world, sharing successes and new developments. Peru recognized officially Palestine in 2011. But even though the historic vote of Peru at UN has always been on behalf of Palestine, still this is not reflected on how this cause has been treated in Peru, and that has to do with the internal politics. What are the main issues involved? Political polarization of left and right wings in the country, as we have heard elsewhere this morning. The radical right Peruvian wing, in view of fractures, unfortunately, is not solving everything. The, they associate the Palestinian cause with an extreme left and the lack of understanding in the region follows the West country's speech, and that is not uniting people. Peru is a mid-income country. That is why we um, are all for multilateralism to defend our own interests. That is to say, even though we don't have enough power to get our interests to prevail, still we try to act within law and international institutions' rules in order to work together with other countries that have a similar position in the world scenario. Peru allocates responsibilities together with countries we have good relations with, especially if they are influential elsewhere. And that is the case of many other countries in Latin America. There's no mystery here. I'll give you an example. If the Peruvian government were to give its opinion on what's happening in some country, the probable result would be that in that other country the situation wouldn't change. But what does change? The situation and the bilateral situation we may have with a country that is perhaps a permanent member of UN with a stronger economy, or perhaps that is a country with which Peru has trade agreements. So Peru has a foreign policy that aims at defending multilateralism and international law on one side, and on the other hand, preserving our diplomatic and economic relations that we maintain with most states. And this implicitly brings in tension, stress. And this is a big question. What happens with a state with which Peru wants to have good relations when that country goes against multilateralism or goes against international law? When that happens, as is the case of Israel, the Peruvian government's declarations uh, mention that, but they don't identify those who are responsible. So the party in question will not feel that it has been mentioned. So not adopting a position is indeed adopting a certain position. What has been our choice lately at country level? Lately in Peru, we've had 8 presidents. And the vote for Palestine in UN has always been maintained on behalf of Palestine. But what is the problem? The political Peruvian class is dominated by right wing, and this somehow affects the Palestinian cause and our relation with Israel. On the other hand, we have a Congress that is superficially informed on what's happening in the Middle East. A distorted story on the occupation and a wrong idea on Israel and its role in the whole history. On the other hand, we have made progress. At the Congress, at least, there have been some declarations, events, and meetings. Some have attacked the Israeli attack on Gaza. There have been statements for the 77 years of Nakba, the ceasefire resolution, the ceasefire to the genocide, and the Rafah refugee camps, and also backing up the South Africans' demand at the International Court of Law. These have been made at the internal events. Now, what's been happening? There have been different manifestations on behalf of Gaza by the parliament and by the foreign ministries in cities such as Lima, Cusco, and Arequipa, and these were replicated in different media. Conversations have been held at universities, informational and cultural journeys to address towards the civil society and individuals as well as BDS. There have been events inside and outside of the club, and solidarity has also been expressed. Let me give you my own experience in Cusco. In the mountain range at the Sacred Valley, 500 persons from the Peruvian and Palestine community met, and together we planted 10,000 trees. 10,000 trees to recall the murdered Palestinian children. This is what it's all about. In the middle of the mountain range, on the other side of the world, there are people thinking about Palestine. So this is an event that was organized by a group of persons from the Cusco Pro-Palestine Association. But this has a lot of potential. Unfortunately, though, there's no political identity or formal identity. The instruments are not as well made as in other countries, such as in Chile, for example. But as I said at the beginning, this is due to the Peruvian political environment. And why do I say this? Because we must understand the political world in our countries to understand our stand vis-a-vis the Palestinian cause. On the other hand, we've been able to raise awareness and more action. Finally, let me say that the Palestinian Committee in Peru reaffirms our commitment to the Palestinian cause, to the liberation of our people, to the defense of the principles behind international law and human rights. We firmly believe that justice and peace will only be reached when we respect UN's resolutions and we put an end to all sorts of occupation and apartheid. Our voice, the voice of the Palestinian community in Peru, joins that of millions and millions of people who demand the international law be met as an obligation, as a moral obligation, as a legal obligation towards the Palestinian people. Thank you for your attention. Muchas gracias, señora Kawasa, por esta presentación de las actividades en Perú y el potencial de aumentar la abogacía por la causa palestina. Y nosotros ahora vamos a seguir con el último orador del día. Estoy hablando de la señora Marcela Sabata. Ella es ex diputada y senadora del Parlamento chileno y ella va a hablar de la situación en Chile. Como ya dije, ella es ex diputada del Parlamento chileno por la región metropolitana de Chile. Y
she served as Vice President and Director of the Organization of the American States for Gender Equity. She was also appointed the G100 Country Chair for the Public Policy by the Women Economic Forum. Currently, she holds various roles in the private sector, including as Director of Public Affairs for the Palestinian Community of Chile. It is a pleasure and honor to have you, Madam Sabat. We may have the floor.
Thank you, President. Muy buenas tardes a todos.
afternoon. I'd like to greet the authorities from UN and all members of civil society and all members from the Palestinian community in Chile. I also would like to greet Francisco Chaguán, a Chilean senator who is very active. It is an honor to be here at this forum that was called on by UN's community in Santiago as origin and the first woman senator in Chile. We are here making not a political event, but a human event. I'm here on behalf of a community that lives between Chile and Palestine, and this has granted a meaning. We are legitimately Chileans, but we have never forgotten Palestine. That duality is no contradiction. It's a way to belong to the world with two hearts and one single cause, justice. Our community is the largest one that has been organized, and it has um, politics, arts, sports, and culture, but always uh, with integration and commitment. Because being integrated has to do with being part of the roots that push us. As of the beginning of the 20th century, this uh, there has been a public voice. And Nicolas Yarur, who was the president of the committee, was a member of the Arab Higher Committee during the NAFCA uh, and participated in the first Palestinian delegation to UN. He is a benchmark in Latin America of coherence and principles in view of the Palestinian question. In Chile, the Palestinian cause is a matter of state policy, not a matter of government or ideology. In turn, as we have often heard in the first panel, all democratic uh, governments since 1990 have maintained a position based on respect for international law, human rights, and humanitarian law. And behind each decision, we have been active, articulate, and vigilant, a community that has not allowed Palestine to disappear from public debate. In 1947, Chile did not vote in favor of the partition plan, maintain its respect for the self-determination of peoples. And even since then, the voice of the first Palestinian migrants, merchants, and teachers helped to establish the view of justice towards the Palestinian people. During the administration of President Elwing, Chile authorized the opening of the embassy of Palestine in Santiago. That was a very symbolic and relevant event. Under Eduardo Frei, we took another step forward, opening the first Latin American diplomatic mission in Palestine, in Ramallah and in East Jerusalem. During the administration of President Lagos, and the second Intifada, Chile recalled its ambassador in protest. And under President Michel Bachelet, this was repeated because of the Israeli aggression in Gaza in 2014-18. Our community, organized around universities, clubs, churches, has a constant voice in public condemnation. And besides, as High Commissioner for Human Rights, Madame Bachelet published a list of companies linked to the occupation. The move that was supported by activism of the Chilean Palestinian diaspora, which provided information and context locally and internationally. President Piñera officially recognized the state of Palestine in 2011, and he visited Ramallah and Belém on 2 occasions. These gestures also came about from the dialogue with the Palestinian community in Chile, promoting high-level meetings, parliamentarian forum, and other networks. The voice of civil society was instrumental so that Chile could become an example in Latin America. President Boric today has maintained a firm and clear voice in defense of the rights of Palestinian people. Chile was the first country to call on consultations with our ambassador in Gaza. We have submitted information to International Court of Justice, submitted evidence to together with Mexico, and granted legislative urgency for a bill forbidding the import of products from illegal settlements. And this is an effective measure, different from overriding international um, agreements, and that is not the kind of um, optimum action. None of this is a coincidence. It responds to the existence of a committed, strong community that has been able to maintain public awareness and a state view with rigorosity and moral standards. A organized, strong Palestinian community that creates checks and balances, and this means we have a consistent state policy. That is why I'm strong in stating this. Now, this unbroken line of diplomatic consistency reflects something deeper than foreign policy. It reflects a national ethical consensus. Defending Palestine in Chile means defending human dignity, the rule of law, and the universal principle of justice. But if peace depends on compliance with international law, then words are not enough. States have an obligation to act in the fact of serious violations of law, and civil societies, the diaspora communities, have a mission to mobilize conscience and to build bridges between peoples. From Chile, we want to keep memories alive, to educate on the values of respect, empathy, and to denounce the normalization of our communication. We do know that the international legality has a meaning, and the silence in view of injustice is never neutral. It means being complicit. And here, the Palestinian women and Latin American women have decided to raise our voices, and we are encouraging the creation of an international organization of women for Palestine that will be opened up in Latin America to bring in the human and gender aspects.
Today, according to the report by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, women are facing more severe food insecurity than men, and in Gaza, mothers often die before their children because they choose to give them their food so that they can survive. In the face of that brutality, we cannot be silent. We want to echo this reality from our region, building a network that combines humanitarian action, political advocacy, and solidarity among women of the world, because peace will not be built only through treaties and speeches. It will also be built in the hands of women who feed, sustain, and resist. Our duty as Chilean, Palestinian, and Latin American women is to transform that resistance into organization, and that organization into action and active hope. And I want to close with deep conviction. Justice is not an act of charity, is a duty. And as long as there's a single voice that refuses to be silenced, there will be hope. From Chile, from Latin America, and from every corner of the Palestinian diaspora, we will continue to stand up defending peace with dignity and dignity with justice. As the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish wrote, "On this earth, Palestine, there is something worth living for." Long live free Palestine. Thank you very much.
Presentation on the actions of the state of Chile to defend human dignity and the application of justice for the Palestinian people. Ladies, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are now ready to start with our interactive session. Participants are welcomed to ask questions or make comments on the presentations of our guest speakers. We shall take a few moments, a few comments or questions from the audience at a time. Then our speakers will have an opportunity to respond, and we shall continue like this. Participants are requested to kindly introduce themselves at the beginning and to make their interventions as brief as possible. The floor is open for comments and questions. I see a hand over here, to be followed by the second one there, and 3. Please, you may take the floor.
Hola, de nuevo.
Hello again. Thank you very much for your presentations and the commitment you express, all of you who presented from your organizations and countries. However, while I was listening about the support initiatives for the Palestine people, we also know that many states in Latin America keep technological trade and cooperation relationships or security relations with Israel, including the importation of surveillance weapons and military technology systems that are proven in occupied territories. In this context, how can our governments and civil societies reconcile their support that's declared for Palestine with the fact that you keep links that indirectly contribute to the sustainment of the occupation and violate the spirit of international humanitarian law? Regarding this, do you think the BDS movement, inspired by international law and the precedent of boycott to South African apartheid, should be a tool adopted more decisively by Latin American countries and institutions to be able to contribute beyond social activism and university activism, and I include myself in everywhere in the world, we could say. Thank you.
We'll take a few more. I have Madam here, yes, followed by the one behind you, and then another one here before we continue with the question, with the responses.
Thank you. Sì, quando
When we fight for a boycott action, we all know its position in Brazil. There's a trend for universities to actually break up with Palestinian uh, uh, universities. My school, and we know that what's behind all that. We know how hard it is and how much it's worth. I'd like to ask Victor, what type of consequences did Colombia experience after the cancellation or suspension of the sales of coal to Israel, which was very important? It was a very important stance in order to agree with the obligations of this country, the international obligations. And also, what is the experience, the concrete experience of stopping the coal sales? And also, Germán, in that same regard, what are the difficulties that the BDS movement experienced until now in Brazil to be able to make some progress regarding oil sales? Brazil sells 3%, according to official information, 3% of the oil that Israel uses that has a direct effect on the planes that are actually committing the genocide. Then we also know the military embargo, or BDS, in Brazil, but this I have more knowledge about this campaign. So my question is mostly about oil. What are the significant difficulties? Because you need to see Petrobras. If you look at who is in control of Petrobras, what type of influence the government can have in Petrobras, and what's the weight of unions in this debate, because the unions are demanding to stop selling, and what types of consequences can Brazil suffer if it stops? BDS thought that it is possible to stop that and stop selling to Israel. There's concrete evidence that this can be done without significant consequences, and therefore it needs to be done. Thank you.
Proceed with you.
Good afternoon. First, I'd like to thank all the speakers present today. My name is Juvia Fernandez. I study international relations of the Universidad Iberoamericana Puebla in Mexico. Yes, and precisely with what Germán and Victor said, I was thinking about the following. Precisely when we talk about the Palestinian cause, we sometimes forget that we live in a region where ideologically we are very much leaning towards the West with the fascism, right? And where we fight against a bias and prejudices against the community, not only Palestinian and Arab and Muslim communities as well. In my program, I've seen phobia against Islam in academia, and together with BDS and other instances of civil society, how can we also fight through this so we can also see that Palestinians are individuals? Because Israel has also dehumanized. Let's remember some words of the Minister of Defense to call animals all the population in Gaza. Unfortunately, civil society is exposed to that. We should remember that Gaza and West Bank have served as laboratories to develop weapons and to develop cybersecurity technologies that governments such as the one in Mexico have purchased. There's a program that is called Pegasus that has been useful to spy on activists, journalists, and including myself. So it's been also what can we do from civil society to exert pressure on our governments? On the one hand, to inform society, but on the other, also to stop investing and keep in financing a genocide. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a hand on my. Yes, indeed. And then thereafter, we'll have another hand this side, and then we can have responses.
Ok. Bueno, me presento.
Let me introduce myself. My name is Monica Ramirez. I was chosen in the peace lenses of the International Union of Socialist Youth. And not only did I want to discuss, but I wanted to make a comment. If you give me a minute. In fact, Chile, that has one of the largest Palestinian communities outside the continent and also refugees. We have realized that from our National Congress. I was a parliamentary advisor in this period, specifically of the Radical Party. Several bills have been proposed, and some of them, which was the bill declaring January 7th of every year of the Chilean-Palestine Friendship Day. But I'd like to clarify so that you realize about how important it's been, this fight. I'm going to be truly candid that Palestine is not forgotten here in Chile, and that the Palestinian community still feels protected in Chile. And its second article says the state will promote the defense of the inalienable rights of Palestine. And my question is also, not only in this case for the former member of parliament Sabat, how can we continue to implement in our parliament, because elections are just around the corner, bills or legislation that can continue making progress without considering any political parties, to keep protecting the Palestinian community in Chile, and how can we also replicate this in other parliaments in Latin America? Because so far Israel keeps having has not actually performed an actual ceasefire, and I feel the situation has worsened instead of improving. That is the sentiment, that they are not going to stop until they actually complete the genocide, and we need to prevent that, at least from Latin America, to be a refuge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There was a hand here, yes, to be followed by, and then here, and then the last one. I would request the participants to be brief, so we can allow the speakers to have enough time to respond and not to also to forget what has been asked of them. Thank you.
Sí, muchas gracias.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to join the question what our sister said here regarding the unions. What happens in Pegasus next Tuesday in the Museo de la Memoria at 11? They will be showing Forever Is Now documentary that actually addresses that complicity in terms of cybersecurity and also armed conflicts. But my question has to do with Bigorot that has not been mentioned this time, and I'd like to please expand because we have three regions, including the metropolitan region government, because there was a meeting between the current governor and the former Israeli ambassador, and those are agreements that are addressed in a very broad fashion, but then we see that Mikodot is behind that. And this is a concern because we know that Chile is the only country that has privatized water supplies. So giving the management of these essential resources actually relinquishing that the management of that resource. Maybe if you'd like to answer, or Victor, regarding the presence of Israel in Latin America, we know that both in the south of Chile and south of Argentina, this has been going on for years. Land acquisition. We also saw Milei offering land specifically to the genocidal state of Israel. So if you could refer to that, because I believe it is also a topic that we should put on the table. And regarding some remarks that we heard before, the fact of understanding that this is an attempt of perpetuating the impunity and the killing of journalists. Just to say, if we are going to talk about conditions, we should talk about hostages, the Palestinian hostages, the Palestinian prisoners in jails in Israel. We call them political detainees, and in reality, evidence shows that what exists in those jails, there are people who should have been freed according to that peace agreement outside the UN, precisely by the country that has blocked any type of access of United Nations, and also in the country that has blocked humanitarian aid throughout all these months. So I believe it is also important to start changing the way in which we call things. Why do I say this? Because the dispute in the narrative in terms of how we will know what has happened for this last 2 years and before in Gaza depends on how we create that narrative. Regarding technology companies, let's think of Google and others, are even downloading the information. They've done it with activism persistently, but today they're also eliminating anything precisely regarding the International Court of Justice, the war crimes, and including hunger, including it as a war crime, and the genocide that we hope is being established. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm Martine Durven. I have worked 32 years for the United Nations as an international civil servant, and I'm really not sure how to phrase my intervention. But I feel I cannot leave this meeting without saying something. And I will make one point and ask one question. The first point is that this dispute usually has 2 or more sides. And one should listen to all sides to fully understand the problems. If you don't fully understand the problems, you will not be able to solve them. And with listening to only one side, one gets a one-sided view. The second is that I've heard the words apartheid and BDS, several times today. And I ask you, do you honestly think that Christians and Jews, Israelis or not, would be welcome in a state of Palestine, be it in the pre-67 borders or whatever borders, or what I also heard today, the historic Palestine, which I guess means from the river, Jordan River, to the Mediterranean Sea, that means one state. So please answer my second question.
Thank you. Let's proceed.
Thank you, President. Francisco Chaguán.
Francisco Chaguán, President of the Human Rights Commission of the Senate in Chile and member of the Human Rights Committee of World Interparliamentarian Union. And also, we have worked for so long with civil society for the full recognition of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people. We are proud, President, that the presence in Chile is during the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the settlement creation of the committee in the United Nations on November 10th, 1975. And also in the context of 21 years after the killing and the death of the Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat, whose cause of death is still being investigated. And of course, just to tell everyone that it is very important, just as we discussed yesterday, to coordinate and articulate the efforts that are being made in different contexts, together with 620 Chilean attorneys led by Ambassador Nelson Haddad. We submitted an action before the International Court of Justice that intends to establish criminal responsibilities because of the genocide in Gaza, in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, in the hands of the Israeli authorities. Secondly, we hope, in my position as member of the Human Rights Committee of IPU, we're able to generate 3 condemnations against the Israeli state in the last session that took place in Geneva a couple of weeks ago, for the imprisonment of Barouti, a Palestinian parliament member that has been in jail for 22 years, that in the last 2 years has been in confinement. He has not been able to be visited by his family nor his attorneys. He's been tortured. And this is what motivated the launch of a global campaign for freeing up Barghouti. The same situation that applies to Deputy Sadat, who's General Secretary of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, that operates as such, but in jail, and also of the Israeli Deputy CDEF, the deputy that has been suspended for 5 times by the Ethics Committee of the Knesset in Israel, basically because of stating that what's happening in Gaza and what happened in Gaza is a genocide, and because of condemning the actions of Minister Netanyahu, who has not been able to perform his job for which he was democratically elected in Israel.
En ese contexto,
In that context, of course, I think it is quite appropriate to focus on the death and homicide of journalists who have specifically tried to cover what is going on in Gaza, as well as the situation of the Palestinian prisoners who are detained without cause, and they have been detained under administrative acts. Quite alarming. Now, given that context, I would like to finish by stating that Gaza urgently calls for this drive towards a 2-state solution with safe, secure, internationally recognized borders. This is extremely important because it is necessary that any solution involves the territorial continuity of the Palestine territory. That is, not having two enclaves. Gaza needs to be linked to Jerusalem and the West Bank, and this involves this concept of territorial continuity, and that be applied by the government that would be in power. And secondly, it is also necessary for the borders to be those that are prior to the 1967 lines, and that any solution also involves not abandoning the search for those responsible for crimes, that is, forced displacement of individuals, the hunger being used as a weapon of war, and other issues related to genocide. Those responsible cannot remain under impunity, and that involves exercising all efforts so that in international fora we can actually, in the end, drive for international justice. And finally, I'd like to talk about what we have done from within the Parliament. I have presided over the Human Rights Commission and others, and both of us have urged the Chilean government to be part of the group advocating for the Palestinian people. And there are many clauses involved therein, and we hope that the Chilean government take the next step as committed to by Foreign Affairs Minister Van Claveren to actually be part of this honorable committee that has done so much to make the Palestinian cause visible. Thank you.
There's a lot of interest being generated now, and I want to give the floor to two last people before the speakers forget the questions on the floor. I want to give the question here, and then there was another question, another hand raised on the other side. Are you still interested? Okay. After, then you can take the floor. Okay. You can go ahead, madam.
Hola.
Hi, my name is Micaela. I'm 22 years old, and I wrote my comments in English, so I will say them in English, and they are written comments. I would like to begin, though, by clarifying the statement given by the woman with short hair. I think she was referring to the promise. I think she was referring to the Jewish people. I would like to begin by saying that I am of Jewish descendant. My great-grandmother survived the Holocaust. But allow me to mention that
Of an accident, it is an outcome of the systematic political violence. Deprivation, humiliation, famine are the wounds Palestine cannot heal, since they are being renewed every day by the Israeli government for more than 70 years. Hunger and aid are being weaponized, becoming a machinery of control and domination. These acts expose the moral collapse of international orders by turning their eye away from what's truly happening. Why the world is determining whose life is worthy and who's expendable. We can't adopt an apolitical framework. I strongly believe that children are the future. I am a mother of a four-month-old. And Palestinian children are the future of the Palestinian society. And it all starts from their childhood, which is being taken away. In 2015, Doa Jassen lost her right hand due to what she thought it was a toy. It was a bomb, and she was only 11 years old. Why are we letting this happen? Nora Walid, Abdullah Salam Shakhen, Mohamed Al-Jabar Said, Adam Mohamed Samir Abu Akhwa, they were children, they didn't even reach their first birthday. I don't know if you know, but a Palestinian child is killed every 30 minutes in Gaza. Every day, children are being robbed from their homes, from their innocence, from their childhood. I'm a little nervous. And I want to conclude by saying, from what I believe, there is no promised land, and I repeat, there is no promised land when the lives of thousands of Palestinians are being taken away. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we now have the last speaker, the last participant that side, before we give the floor to the speakers?
¿Aló? ¿Sí? Bueno, Marimar.
Marimara Compuche. I am greeting you in my native language, Mapundungun. For us, the Mapuche people, Earth is our mother, just a single being, and we are all sisters of the same land. And what happens up there, everywhere, has an impact on us. And what's happening in Palestine affects us as well. It's a genocide, matricide. We are all children of this earth, brothers, sisters. I am a medicinal expert in my community, thanks to teachings from my mother, and I would like to focus on the importance of addressing how dangerous the racial danger involved in Zionism. Marxism is Zionism is what we have as today as the internal enemy, not Marxism, not Mapuches. Zionism about hate. It's about imposing supremacy to accumulate wealth, water, land. The planet's energy imbalance from the Mapuche perspective is directly related to the expropriation of water and the kidnapping, one could say, of water. Water is a vital element for Earth's balance, and if our water is taken, stolen, kidnapped, one could say, in Golan Heights or in Renca, where I live, which is just a half an hour outside of Santiago, where we have more than 15 wells that involve perpetual water rights for our community. But we have the largest Coca-Cola company, Black Power, that has been there since the 80s, and that's Zionism here as well. So let us focus on the importance of coming up with the necessary sanctions. And this is in addition to what the former Senator Shawan has mentioned and what others have mentioned about the water, the government contracts, and the contracts that the governments throughout the region and the world have on water. Water is crucial. Zionism is dangerous as a thought process, and it has been installed throughout this region since the onset of the School of the Americas as part of the military thought. That's why it's crucial for us to take awareness of this, to restrict and limit this. So I would also like to echo Marcela's words in that women around the world have played a historic role. We give life, and above and beyond the differences we may have, today our Mother Earth is suffering because of this scourge that is hurting her children. So it's very important for us to free up the water rights. And it's not just genocide perpetuated against a human group. There's a matricide. We see that the life overall in Gaza is being decimated. We saw that in Syria as well. How many people had to die in Syria, in Israel, in the US? And we are very close, unfortunately, in our region to reproducing a Gaza. So let's not have that happen. Let's do away with our differences. Let's each of us contribute with our own wisdom and know-how in order to contribute to the ecological, environmental restoration of Mother Earth, because human laws make mistakes, and the Earth self-governs. The Earth has lived through many different human catastrophes and destruction. We, as human beings, have just recently been around, one could say. The universe has been around for much longer, so it's important for me to share this cosmovision with you. As Mapuche, as a nation, we know what genocide is, we know what hate speech is, and we have a great deal to discuss and to engage in dialogue, to contribute. We are a peaceful peoples. We do not have an army, and we dealt with the Spanish Empire for years. We know a great deal about diplomacy, the diplomatic arts, one could say. And so all of our Palestinian and Syrian community members, we wish them strength, and let us try to get back to our medicinal wisdom. Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute. She was a medicine woman, and she was protecting life. With this, I'm going to finish. With that, we can also, through the diaspora, recover our medicinal wisdom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Time is not on our side. I'm going to give the floor, the last 1 minute, to this before we seriously allow our speakers to respond, because time is limited and we have 5 speakers who need to respond to the various questions. You have the floor.
Thank you. Buenas tardes, mi nombre.
Good afternoon. My name is Nora Goldun. I work for the Palestinian community in Chile. My question is for the representative from Peru. Although the Peruvian Palestine community is not the largest in the region, their role continues to be key as part of the overall Latin American efforts to make the Palestinian cause more visible. Now, given that, what actions do you think are priority to reinforce the Palestine community in Peru and to come up with a pact to defend the Palestinian people's rights? Thank you.
I'm going to give the floor to the speakers to respond now, but before they respond, I just wanted to make a short response on the question of the one-sided question that came on the floor. I think the committee on the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people was established through the United Nations General Assembly resolution to champion the cause of the Palestinian people, and it is open to all member states to come and express their views. It raises awareness on the atrocities being perpetrated against the Palestinians. The committee is not against Israel, and this has been made very, very clear. And I think the committee also does not suppress views of any member, and any member is welcome to air their views. Invitations are extended to every member state, or every individual to come, and such interactive sessions are therefore there to provide an opportunity for all members to air their views. So I just wanted to make this clear a little bit before we proceed. And let's proceed with Master Rabba to respond, and then we'll proceed in such a following each other on my right-hand side before we go to my left-hand side. You have the floor, Master Rabba.
Muchas gracias, nuestro presidente, por la palabra. Me gustaría comentar dos cuestiones. La primera, acerca de tu proposición de las relaciones con Israel y los acuerdos con Israel, etc. Estoy de acuerdo con todo lo que dije, pero hay que acrescentar. Israel, el sionismo, exporta al mundo, o al menos a este continente, mucho más ideología, odio e intolerancia do que armas y municiones. En Brasil, las armas que matan son estadounidenses y brasileñas de Taurus. 0.1% posiblemente sean israelíes, pero desde 40 años hasta el día hasta los días de hoy, Israel exportó para Brasil una ideología falsamente religiosa que sioniza el cristianismo y que llevó a la periferia, a las poblaciones periféricas brasileñas, una ideología de odio, de intolerancia, y también formó parte del crimen organizado como parte de la política israelí, al punto de haber territorios en poblaciones empobrecidas brasileñas designados como Israel. O sea, el Estado brasileño.
That is to say, the Brazilian state has been challenged by the Zionist ideas within our own country, within our own territory, and that culture of hatred and intolerance threatens Catholics, the religions coming from Africa, imposing on Brazil the Islamophobia and Arabophobia, and recently Palestine phobia. And this is all bringing a hatred culture for our society, and this has to be understood. It has to be challenged because Israel became a danger to our interests. It became a danger to the Brazilian society. It became a danger to the Brazilian state, to our own constitution, to the legality, the Brazilian legality, to the Brazilian peace of mind. That is what Zionism is all about. Secondly, I also, with the permission of BDS, to say that denying Israel is an obligation, but it is also an obligation to search for cooperation agreements with Palestine. I'll give you an example that we were debating on 3 days ago in Brasilia. In order to import tavares from Argentina, we don't have any price competitives because the Israeli are cheaper in our market right now. There's an agreement for economic cooperation or a free trade agreement, Mercosur, Israel. Professor Arlini talked about that previously. In the meantime, there's also an agreement between Mercosur and Palestine that has already been ratified in Brazil, but it still is not enforced. It has not been implemented. The Palestine, if that is to be passed, the Palestine products may come to our own country, so the Palestine farmers may use our market. So the agreement with Palestinian individuals and the provinces, the town halls, universities will all they all profit, and that's strategic. We cannot forget about that. I would also like to point out something about the two sides. It's very strange that we talk about two sides when one side suffers from genocide and the other one is imposing that genocide. It's like talking about the fascism and talking to fascism. It's like talking about apartheid with South African and talking about those who have been suffering from that regime to get rid of it. Talking about the grandchildren of Leclerc and Peter Botar or discuss slavery in Brazil, calling the grandchildren of the owners of slaves. This is all strange. It doesn't make sense. So I don't think it's a two-sided thing. The fact is there is a supremacist side that that is into apartheid and in detailed information do so. And there's another side that is suffering from that apartheid or discussing the genocide from this continent. That means that we should call those who did it discussing the atomic bombs on Japan, and asking for those who did it to give us information. Should we call Leopoldo to those who have been practicing these kinds of activities? So I think that we're talking about an instrument from Israel, from Zionism, in order to place the those who have been suffering from this genocide in the same level of those who are doing it. I think that talking about genocide is not debated, it is fought. I now want to mention something that really draws my attention, the left-wing Zionism. Well, I imagine that we talk about the left Zionism because if it's left, it's good. But in that case, is there a left-wing Zionism, a left-wing colonialism? Is there a left-wing genocide? What does exist? Can this be possibly left-wing? When we talk about the left, we talk about everything that is good. All of the problems from until 75 done by the left. Bergoglio self um, self he said he was a left-wing person. He was and before that, the British colonialism was also associated with the left Zionist hegemony from 48 until 77. Nakba. Everything was from left Zionists. So we don't have to talk about the left Zionists because there is no left wing that kills on behalf of colonialism. We have to demystify that invention. Thank you for your attention.
Keep their comments a bit brief because we are out of time. Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. Bueno, Roque Dalton decía que no hay que olvidar.
We should not forget that the last fascists among fascists are also fascists. We cannot forget that the last Zionists among Zionists are also Zionists. Having said that, thank you. Now, Arlen's question, and by the way, we met in an event 20 years ago. What about Colombia not selling coal to Israel? Well, who will answer depends on whoever answers. We're talking about the fact that in Colombia, some people are saying that we are losing because we're not selling coal to Israel. And these are the same who didn't want to place taxes when we used to sell it. So there is a merchandising rationale that is bringing in all of this pressure. President Precious spoke at UN and in the streets of New York, and I am proud to have been translating that for him. Now, what was the result of all of that? That Francesca Albanese is putting pressure. The judge from International Court of Law is also suffering pressure, and I would suggest that this be a topic of debate within our own institutions, and that is whether we're going to leave people alone who are risking for Palestine, or we will be solidary with them. And secondly, there is no occupation economy, an economy for genocide, and an Israeli economy. They're all the same. So we can't say we won't buy products from the settlements, but we will still buy from the Zionist regime. So we have to go and take a look at this Albanese activity, because that is fundamental to find out the links involved. Now, and also, what can we do for Palestine? I would say that we have to go beyond the heart. I include myself. We don't know that much. We want Palestine. Where is Palestine in the map? I don't know, but I still like Palestine. So we have to be more studious. We have to be more serious. We have to be more informed from a legal, diplomatic, economic standpoint. This is our task at hand. I say that I am left in terms of values. I say that, but I must study like everybody else about this. As to the academia, we're not well off. In Colombia, there's a professor who says we can't talk about Gaza because Gaza is not an academic matter. So let's take a look at what some U.S. universities have done and UK as well. There are universities who have not adopted these thoughts. The big question that I make here, are we going to help out the streets of Gaza with this? I have been talking to President Petro. If our action is not good to help out what's happening in Gaza, then we're not thinking correctly. We're not acting correctly. We do so to please ourselves, or is it really to help it out? And Zionism is not an Israeli project on its own. It's an international project. It's a way of doing politics, and there are groups with moral superiority. But there are Zionists, and I have heard expressions like this throughout the world. And the media, they are deeply Zionists. So reducing the debate to the stress between these two countries is not correct. And finally, the question is whether the Palestinians are willing to receive Palestinians. Well, they did so in 48, in 47, in 97 until today. There were places in for Jews in many countries, and I don't think that these Jewish neighborhoods have been persecuted by Arab mobs. No. Now, the idea of to supplement what you said, and I fully agree with you. Now, let me say that I'm tired of going to fora where we hear that we have to invite the Israelis and others. How many fora and conferences, assemblies where Israelis have invited Palestinians? Not a single one. Thank you.
Bueno, yo quisiera complementar.
I'd like to supplement this, that we shouldn't forget that in Palestine historically we have coexisted Christians, Muslim, and Jews in peace. And we cannot forget that. And we should always remember that. And as to your question, I believe that it's important to strengthen relationship between Palestinian communities in the region. We must have joint work that will thread a road of cohesion and representation. We must make headway towards better organization that would consolidate the links with the Palestine diaspora, reaffirming our own identities, not only as a cultural legacy, but also as a political, moral commitment with the Palestinian cause and its international presence. Thank you. Thank you. I see these tremendous interests on the campaigns and solidarity towards Palestine. Wonderful. Now, I know I am short of time. This will be a general answer, and this has to do with BDS and the cost involved. There's something that is very important. They want us without hope. They want people to be demobilized, but they won't get that because we are a majority that is claiming for the end of the occupation and genocide against the Palestinian people. And those who be ashamed are those who defend that genocide against the Palestinian people, and not those who speak out, who ask for sanctions, a boycott, and investment. That's my first point. Secondly, free trade agreements in the region. At the National Committee, we say we should negotiate with genocides and not with someone who's fleeing the justice as Netanyahu. So what can we expect that Latin America, in terms of buying from a genocide? Well, Mekorot is a company that was stealing from the Palestine, and then we talked about the weapons, and we have already said that in the dictatorships in Latin America, there were military embargoes because of violations against human rights. And those who sold weapons to dictatorships were precisely Israel with the okay from U.S. Let us not forget that. Let us not forget about the corporation of murderers in Israel. And they are murdering the Palestinian people. And these are the ones who want to sell here in the region what they sold during dictatorships. So let us now join the boycotts. As a Mexican colleague said, 180,000 persons got together singing solidarity songs pro-Palestine. Now, if all of us do something in solidarity with Palestine, being concrete, asking for sanctions and boycotts, then we will eventually isolate these genocide countries. We have to isolate them from a political and economic standpoint. Let us all join this. And the Colombian University, for example, they recently in Colombia claimed to be a space free of apartheid. We have to follow examples. Let us recall that not long ago, the Mekorot was expelled from a Latin American Caribbean territory that is a Dominican Republic. And this is an applause for that. And in Brazil, they were also got that contract not to be signed for more than $200 million. I know there's not any time to continue, but please join the campaigns of solidarity with Palestine. And we're talking about colonialism, and that is on from the Palestinian civil society that asks that we be concrete. I invite you all to join. Let us not forget that when we are trading with Israel, we're trading with a genocide country, a state. And this is going to be prejudicial to our own countries. Thank you. Thank you. I also would like to talk about what can we do from our congresses. We as Palestinian community have as an important goal to keep constant updated relation with parliaments and congresses. And this should be cross-cutting. We constantly have this kind of debate. There's a parliamentary group that is the largest one, and the Senate and the lower house that have to do with the Palestine are involved. Many statements have been made coinciding with the Palestinian community. There are internal resolutions that have been made. So we are doing this and leading this into the state. And this goes from right wing to left wing, all are involved. And the Palestinian community now has different activities. For more than 10 years, every year they take different groups of parliamentarians. And one was President Boric today to visit the other country. Now, when we talk about Palestine, a faraway country that is not much related to Latin America, but we gave these trips, and they are very important. aside from this friendship group, we got together with the embassy of Palestine here and a group of women in the parliament. There we have different statements that have been made, very much aware of this international group that we wish to create, involving Palestinian women talking for these women. The bill that has to do with getting January the 7th for the solidarity for the Palestinian people, and we have supported the celebration of that day. Right now, this is being debated at the Senate. It has been already passed at the lower house. Minister Lobo is also trying to speed up this project. But the project that I mentioned previously is even more important. That is based on pure international law and has to do with the prohibition of products and services coming from territory that is occupied. And this is based in international law, and that is the international legality and historical information that has to do with the apartheid in South Africa that ended with international sanctions. It has to do with the trade with diamonds and human rights. This is sanctions, and these diamonds were no longer bought by other markets. So this has to do with sanctions that may be helpful. What Palestine needs are concrete action that will disencourage Israel to continue committing these crimes. We also believe in our community that we should condemn that occupation, but we should also fight firmly with action as of the rule of law. This is something that can be done in order to sanction the occupation of Israel at all levels and at all states. Thank you.
I'm beyond my the for the session. 1 minute, thank you.
No, simplemente señalar que el justamente en el Senado pasó justamente por la Comisión de Derechos Humanos y se aprobó por unanimidad el que prohíbe la importación de territorios ocupados ilegalmente. También recibió urgencia legislativa y patrocinio del proyecto por parte del presidente Boric. El proyecto está para ponerse en tabla en la Comisión de Constitución.
So in the Constitution Committee, and we hope that bill will be approved by the committee and the Senate. We believe we have the votes in the Senate across the board, from left to right, and there are probably votes against on the right side of the spectrum and the left side of the spectrum. The leaders of the Chile-Israel parliamentarian group are leftist. Even some of them are leaders of their parties. So what I want to communicate is that the fight for the Palestinian cause is across the board, and it's cross-cutting, and we hope that we have the votes in the Senate so it's approved and it will go to the lower chamber for discussion. Thank you very much, President.
It's a very important intervention indeed, and we appreciate. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our deliberation of the plenary, of the second plenary. On behalf of the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, I would like to express our deep appreciation to the distinguished speakers who shared their knowledge and experience. Many thanks also goes to those who participated and who contributed to the discussion. To all of you, and for your interest and the attention. Let us not forget the interpreters who are most of the time forgotten. Your service is highly appreciated. It made us understand each other. At this juncture, I would want to switch the chair and call upon the chair of the committee to now take over. I thank you once more. Let's give a hand of applause to our speakers.